Back to our coverage of the U.S. election, where Donald Trump has now made a historic comeback to the White House. Caroline Presutti, senior correspondent, Voice of America, is actually in Florida. Caroline, thank you for joining us on the news this hour. Florida is painted red, as we know. What's the reaction there following the outcome of this election?
Well, certainly we were inside the convention hall when former President Donald Trump actually congratulated his supporters and said, I wholeheartedly accept, the second term of mine, now your 45th and your 47th president, he said last night. And it was quite a different speech in that convention hall than we're used to hearing from Trump. He was actually very appreciative, very thankful, very humbling last night, and his entire family was behind him, as was his vice presidential running mate, J.D. Vance, and his family behind him. And you can imagine the voters, the volunteers, the aides, the staff members that were in this convention hall. There were about 500 people there, jubilant, celebrating all through the night. They had been watching the numbers, and they didn't really know which way they were going. Now, today, I think a lot of Democrats are waking up and trying to figure out what happened. They are all looking back at the voting results, trying to figure out which way the country is headed, because it didn't, the polling didn't hold true. So Democrats are trying to figure out what America really wants, what the voters really want, and whom didn't vote for whom, right? So they're looking at their candidate and saying, why didn't Harris win? And incidentally, in about 3 hours, Vice President Harris will speak to the public, and she's expected to give her concession speech.
Absolutely. Talking about the Democrats, congratulatory messages are already pouring out for Trump from across the world. Do you consider it weird that Kamala Harris is yet to concede defeat in this election and congratulate Donald Trump?
It reminds me of me being in 2016. I was at the Javits Center in New York City when Hillary Clinton lost to Donald Trump. And it was surreal being in that convention hall because the mood was so up. Everybody thought Hillary was going to win. And we all knew, as members of the media, because we had access to the numbers, we knew that it wasn't looking good for Hillary, but yet the crowd was still up. And as soon as the numbers went on the jumbotrons there, you could just hear a pin drop. Everybody, they didn't know what to do, and they didn't want to leave, right? And they kept on waiting for Hillary Clinton to come out. And if you'll remember, she didn't come out until the next day for her concession speech. And those supporters didn't know what to do. They hung around. Well, last night, somebody did come forward and say that Harris would not have a speech until today. So they knew that. But it does remind me back then, it depends on the candidate. Do they choose to speak that night? And, Harris had already come out and said, we won't make a statement until tomorrow because not all the results are in. And certainly Trump did come out before he hit the number 270 electoral votes. But it definitely looked like the numbers were leaning that way when he did come out to speak to his supporters and the public.
And it's shown that kind of confidence right from day one, even pre-election, even till this time. He's anticipating having more. He says at least 315 electoral votes. Is that feasible?
Right, it really is, because if you look at those swing states, there are only 2 swing states still up for grabs, right? So that means 5 swing states that everybody thought was going to be so close and was going to be split, and the all-important Pennsylvania with its 19 electoral votes, those all went to Trump. But even more important is to look at the states that Joe Biden flipped 4 years ago, right? They were in Republican hands, Republican territory, red states, as we call them, and then Joe Biden flipped them in the last election to Democratic blue states. And then Trump flipped them again back to Republican states. And so it's interesting to look at those now, 3 of those right now, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Georgia. As I said, we're still waiting to hear about Arizona and Nevada. But, those swing states could all go toward Trump. And this election definitely isn't as the poll said it would be. It wasn't razor thin as we thought it was. A lot of people are saying it's because the youth vote really got out and voted. They're giving the young people, young Americans, credit in this election. And, that's really what Donald Trump had tried very hard to get young white males out. He was speaking on various podcasts that they follow. And it appears that he was very successful in that. Where on the flip side, it doesn't appear that Harris got as many women out to vote for her as she had planned. So we not only had a gender gap, we also had a youth gap in this vote.
It will be mind-blowing to see him win in more swing states. That's perhaps what many Democrats did not see coming. But that's our time. Caroline Presutti, senior correspondent, VOA, thank you so much for talking to us.
My pleasure.